So welcome to MindShifters Radio. Today's Friday already, January 23rd, 2026. Welcome, Michael. You're surrounded by women so far.
That's all right. I love it. I love it. I was probably 30 years ago, I was at a conference center and they were doing a moon sweat and I was the only guy on the property. It's like, wait a minute, is this you're going to leave me out? And they included me, which is different than, when that year when Jeannie did her women's intensive, I said, I'll even wear a dress, honey. You got to let me come. She wouldn't let me do it. It was really uncouth, but oh well.
But I would share that in these, like I do a lot of women's circles, but in these interactions where we're all here and you're here, Dr. Ryce, the presence of the container has such a grounded, it feels like it's in divine containment. Does that make sense? And it feels, it has a whole different energy of real safety, can let more nervous system guard down. I don't know how to put it into a lot of language, but it definitely changes the space. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. And you'll remember the first night of the intensive, we talked about, one of the reasons why people don't uncover and work through what it is they need to work through is because when it happened, they didn't feel safe. And if they don't ever get to safety, it's never going to come up. So that's one of the objectives in the intensive is to create that safe space to allow whatever needs to surface for anybody and to just hold the space for it and then help to process through those things. And of course, the whole idea, there's an intellectual component to the tools. And people say, well, gee, Michael, you're always telling us to be out of our minds, and here you are doing all this head stuff. What's wrong with you? It's like, well, nothing, but here's what I've discovered, or at least what's true for me. Because the mind is a resonance device, if there's a resonant frequency, the mind's going to come up with whatever it's got that matches. And so the idea of the intellectual part of this, of course, one is to transfer the tools, and the other one is to answer all the questions that carbon-based memory has, so carbon-based memory gets the hell out of the way and we do the work. Now, there are a lot of people who go in the direction of, and I usually do this. About the only place I really do it is when I go and do a Course in Miracles group. And when we were on the road, we'd often be invited, the different places we were that had Course in Miracles groups. And I would always start out, and, I have a 4x8 whiteboard is what I usually work with as we had at the intensive. And I would write in the largest letters that I could. And this would be a Course in Miracles study group. And I'd write as large as I could on the board, don't study A Course in Miracles. Everybody would hold their breath and go, what do you mean? This is a Course in Miracles study group. It's like, learn forgiveness. It's not about the intellect filling the mind with information. Yes, it's giving it the tools that open the pathway, but answering its questions to get out of the way and then doing the work. Just filling the mind, filling the mind, filling the mind, filling the mind. It's like lining up more icebergs for the Titanic. It's just... So the idea is not to study it. I love how, with the facilitated codependence that Susan's leading. We counted up. We had 18 weeks of just working gut level work with that Power Person worksheet, and now we're going into the fourth week or the fourth session on the responsibility communication. And the objective is to just open to get to the gut level and clean it out. So thank you for noticing that. Thank you for saying thank you. And of course, the line in the worksheet that says, when I choose love, it wakes up to love in everyone. The objective here is to strengthen the ability for each of us to stand as a space of love, because the more each of us can do it, the more powerful and the safer that space is going to be. And the quicker, when things come up, they're going to dissolve, they're going to dissipate. So, honored and delighted.
And Miss Carrie has her hand up.
Cool.
Hi.
I
Hi.
thought you were on your way to India.
I'm leaving tomorrow.
Ah, well, that's awesome. Have a
Yeah, my
wondrous
flight's
journey.
tomorrow. Yeah, thank
Cool.
you. I'd like to go back to what Andrea was saying and kind of tie it in with what you just said in terms of my understanding of your masculine energy. And I think, I mean, I also have done a lot of women's groups, and I'm all for that. I think it's really important for women to have a safe space because our culture's idea of masculinity is very toxic. I've lived in other cultures. I lived in England, and I would say their culture is also of toxic masculinity, but a bit less arrogant about it.
Right.
And other cultures have, they're like where I'm going in India, that's incredibly toxic masculinity. And I
Yeah.
think what this work has done for you and for other men who are doing this work is that it's releasing that. And I think that toxic masculinity is a prison for men. And
Mm-hmm.
and I see it all the time. And what happens, of course, is then the men blame the women and, all of that stuff that happens, right?
Yeah, but they die on average 10 years earlier than the women do. They really need to
No.
look at that.
Yeah. And I think it makes everyone deeply unhappy, this toxic masculinity. So to do this work,
I wouldn't put cause on that.
okay. Well, to do this work, I do believe releases men from that toxicity of masculinity. Now, masculinity in itself is a part of us, right? So we have
All of
that
us.
balance. Yeah. So I think when you were talking about being invited into that group of women, they felt and they understood that you were bringing a balance to them without the toxicity. I mean, that would be my take on it, just from the story you said. I can't really say what they felt, but that sounds a reasonable conclusion. And I think that we're all looking for that, right? We're all looking to balance our masculine and feminine within us. And so the more men, that's why, the men who do this work with you, I am, I've been having conversations with Joe Bryson every other week. We've been talking for over a year. And
Nice.
we've been talking about this kind of stuff and how he was brought up with that. But even as a very young boy with his uncles and, parents and grandparents, he recoiled from that toxic masculinity. And I think it's more important than ever, not just to have women's groups, but to have men's groups, to be able to tap into their feminine side and to release the toxicity that the culture has brought to their masculinity. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah,
I
the
have a lot of-
brainwashing the culture is pretty bizarre.
I have a lot of deep compassion for men who I see are caught up in that and who play it out, not just in their relationships with their partners, but in the culture, in their jobs, in whatever, in the relationship between country and country, all of that. I have a lot of deep compassion for that wounding. It's a lot of wounding and deep betrayal that I have a little philosophy about this, and I'm not saying it's all about this, but I think circumcision is a big part of it, is a big part of the wounding.
It's an horrific thing.
Yeah, And a big
to do what
part
job?
of the rage. Yeah. Welcome to the world. We're going to bring
Yeah.
you into the world in pain and suffering.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty bizarre. And the idea that, people say, well, but God said, well, excuse me, if you go back into the original text, God wasn't saying to cut a baby's genitals. It was circumcision of the heart. It was taking the insanity out of the unconscious mind that they were talking about. That was not what it was about. But yeah, it's all got to be cleaned up. Fortunately, when my son was born, I was aware enough not to put him through that, and it's an atrocity. I think.
Likewise, my son's in his 40s, and I wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
And there's female circumcision too. That all
Yes.
comes from the patriarchy. That comes from power and control. I don't know about male circumcision, if that does or not. I don't understand it, but I see female circumcision as coming from power and control systems.
I've never really looked into female circumcision in that regard, but it seems that the cultures that do engage in it, it's the women that are doing it to the child. So
well, can I
that's
also
my
say
understanding.
that a lot of women, for their own protection, women buy into the patriarchy. And
Mm-hmm.
you can tell those women because they are so identified with the patriarchy that they do things like that. And women do that for their own protection because they feel like they don't have their own power. I don't know if Andrea or the others would agree with me, but what I see is that when people lump all women together and say, oh, if we had women in charge, it would be great. And I would be like, well, look at what women are doing in charge today. And take a look at the women who are buying into the patriarchy for their own safety. So they uphold all of the systems of the patriarchy. And women who are a little bit more awake can step outside of that. And when I first went into business and my job and things, I was always trying to do it the men's way. I even learned a different language. I learned men's language, and I learned men's intonation with language so that I could rise to the top. So we buy into those patriarchal things in order to succeed and in order to be safe. And then when we become aware of that, we can step outside of that and say, oh, gee, I don't always have to be logical. I can follow my intuition and I can do it with pride. So there's a place where women are starting to step outside of that. And then there are places where women are still so very tied in to those patriarchal systems and structures that they even go so far as to maul and damage their children.
I'm going to go back and watch again. It's been from the first year it came out. Not even sure what year it came out. Probably better than 20 years ago, but an interesting movie to put, as I recall the film, to put into this conversation might be to watch the film The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Because remember, every little boy who became a man was brought up by a woman. So I'm not sure we can lump all men together and say the patriarchy and it's all there without recognizing that each of those who became part of the patriarchy.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is that women, for their own protection, and safety have become, many women have become part of the patriarchy. And that's how they raise their sons. They raise their sons to fit in with the patriarchy so that they'll be safe. And they raise their daughters to acquiesce to the patriarchy so that they'll be safe.
Well, once again, I'll just throw into the equation. It might be interesting to watch the film, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Yeah, I'd love to watch that.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear what other people think about this.
Yeah. By the way, I did send you a text. When you say you're flying to India, I remember how long that flight was. And I just sent you some stuff on, and I don't know how accurate it is. It's just something that I had come across, and I pass on to people that are making long flights about dealing with jet lag, some of the things that might be helpful in that regard.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, cool.
Andrea's got her hand up.
Well, let's go for it.
Yeah, I have some curiosities that come into my mind in listening to this conversation, that as I'm becoming more aware of my own regulatory speech, like there's two things that are coming forward for me. And in regulatory speech, when I'm getting more present, like more in a meditative space, feeling the energy of the words, and coming from the perspective that my mind energy is what is creating the pictures in my mind, right? Which has been like a really profound way of looking at things. So when I feel into the words, because these are common, toxic or horrific, it feels in my body, in my awareness, that it holds like this, almost like some victim energy, and also judgment, and also other subtleties that are really difficult to put into words. But so my curiosity, Dr. Ryce, is that as you've been bringing regulatory language, front and center for me, I would love to hear what you have to say. And that doesn't discount at all the understanding that this stuff is something that has happened. And it doesn't discount how out of balance things are presented, with the masculine and feminine. And that's not discounting that in any way, because I definitely have grown up in that whole play of energy. And the other part is that when I focus on these topics outside of just witnessing, I focus on them with charge and energy behind it, a victim or judgment. I really can see, I can't believe how much I feel like I'm breaking through these illusions, like these files that I have, the way that you call it, files. And when I get these consistent moments of breaking through, I can see how speaking about it in certain ways feeds it and keeps it alive. So I'm superhuman, obviously, but I am just becoming so aware of being so conscious how I talk or think about these things. So I would love to hear what you have to say about that.
My take would be that one of the most important things is that whatever it is we're speaking of as we speak is that we're breathing, that the breath is present. And we have language, and not all language is regulatory speech. Regulatory speech is a reflection of the unconscious dynamics we hold, if there are unconscious dynamics around something. But I think that we can all agree that something that shatters the life force in someone, something that assaults, is in fact an assault. And I can speak with held breath about an assault and go, there's my signal, I've got some work to do. And of course, anything that I can see, I can only see it because I have the brain cells for it. My brain can only generate that because I have the brain cells for it. And there are two places I can come from with any incoherent energy. I think we can acknowledge there are incoherent energies that don't support human life, and so we would call those incoherent. And to be able to acknowledge, recognize that incoherent energy, I have to have been there, done that. I've got the brain cells for it. And there are two perspectives from which I can recognize it. One, been there, done that, and have not yet earned the t-shirt, so I've still got work to do around it. And the other one is, I've earned the t-shirt, I breathe when I speak of it, and I can just acknowledge that there it is. And there's a fine line between pretense and spiritual bypass, and being able to acknowledge this is truly an assault on human life, and one that we need to confront and do something about. Does that kind of fit with your question?
Yeah, it definitely adds more context around it, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a delicate balance there. And again, for me, the key is my breath moving? Then okay, I can go ahead with this. If it's not, then I want to be taking a breath, looking deeper, and processing through it. That the story that always comes back to me is the word haole from Hawaii that was applied to the white man and meant, at least in one context, griefs without breath. And since the breath is the deliverer of intelligence, my take would be griefs without intelligence. And so if I speak of a subject without intelligence, with no breath, then I'm going to find myself in some sort of difficulty. I can speak about the same subject with breath. And if there is anything moving in me that needs to be healed, that breath is going to handle that. It's going to do that.
Yeah, that's helpful, because I do definitely, I used to call myself a professional spiritual bypasser, because that was a big practice for me. So it's something that I'm learning balance with, along with, my empathy used to be very, like, I've just become really aware how it was. I don't know the opposing to it, but it felt out of balance in the sense that I was so empathetic that I would even continue to put myself in a situation that wasn't okay for me, out of having, tipping the scales into too much empathy. So if you can even touch on that, I don't know what the opposing energy and how that balance looks, but if you can touch on that too, that would be really helpful.
Say more about this idea of too much empathy.
So how it showed up for me in the past, my past relationship, I just could really see his wounding not being so in touch with mine, but really seeing his. And I did everything to meet his needs and understand where he was coming from, even when it turned into this big lie that was revealed that was completely out of my integrity. and I stayed even though my need was to leave because I was over empathizing with his wounding and why he's doing what he's doing. But there wasn't the balance there where it's like, yeah, you can empathize on someone's human life and their wounds, but also have the balance where you take care of yourself and address your own wounding, maybe. Does that kind of give you an example to make sense?
I think so. There's a story that I tell in the workshops oftentimes. I don't know whether I've shared it when you've been on the show or even in the intensive, whether I shared it or not, but it's one of Jeannie's favorite stories. So I just give her that signal. She knows the one I'm going to tell. And it's about the little old lady who loves movies. And she hears about this new film coming to town. She finds out the first showing. She buys tickets online. She leaves early. She's going to get to the theater because she's a little hard of hearing, doesn't see very well. So she sits right up in the front row. And there's a huge traffic jam up. She gets locked in the traffic jam up and gets there late and gets the last seat at the very back of the theater. And there's a couple right in front of her that through the whole film are just laughing hysterically. And finally, this little lady, she's not catching the film, not hearing it. This girl's cackling away. And she finally reaches over and sort of jabs this girl in the shoulder. Says, "Young lady, are you feeling hysterical?" And the girl turns around, kind of like, not sure what to say for a second. She goes, well, he was feeling mine first. You can't feel anybody else's. I can understand another's circumstance because I have the brain cells for it. But if I'm feeling something, I'm feeling what's going on inside of me. I'm not feeling what's going on inside of them. And I think there's a whole community of people who call themselves empaths. Oh yeah, I can feel every pain they've got. Excuse me? You can feel every pain that you've got that matches the pain that they've got. Yes, their pain is resonating your pain, but what you're feeling is your own. And so to me, in that circumstance, you're talking about the first order of business would be, I can empathize with this. So now I have dissociated pain in me, which is resonated by what I at least perceive to be his. And that dissociated pain in me, since it's dissociated, and he's my object of attention, I use those very brain cells to build a construct in my mind that I call him. But the him that I'm really dealing with in that case is not the person I'm in relationship with. It's the him that's showing up in my mind as a construct out of what I've not resolved. And so that's where that thought in the worksheet comes from. And that says, if I'm in pain, my thinking isn't there. There's something off base in me. And so that, to me, would be the first order of business, just to stop, take a breath, and go home. Okay, so I think this is about his pain. I'm feeling pain. I'm feeling trauma. I'm feeling turmoil, whatever it is. But my input would be, well, come back, take a breath, cancel the goal you have for him, collapse into that data in your store with which you are generating that particular picture of him that you think is him, person you think you're looking at. There's one of the texts, and I don't remember which one of the books that didn't get into the scriptures. And the disciples are with Yeshua, and the Pharisees are kind of socking it to Jesus. They're just like railing on him. And the disciples turn to him and say, kind of like, why don't you give them back some of their own medicine? Why don't you sock it to them like they're socking to you? And Yeshua says, I have none of that in my store. There's none of that in me. So I can't puke it out on them, even though they're puking it out on me, because I don't have any of that. Is that opening any space up?
Oh, that's like super powerful to me. Yeah, it feels like a deeper clarity than even what I was thinking in context of how it even kind of plays out. But yeah, that's exactly it. That was exactly what I was seeing, and I was facing unresolved ancestral issues. It was so big, I just didn't quite understand how to perceive it. And I used to be very empathic about all these things. And you're right, focusing outward, like denying and dissociating. That's exactly what it was. And that's the powerful, potent part for me. So thank you. Yep, that really clears it up.
Cool. And the objective, the work we're doing now with the healing through relationships and what's going on in the codependence is to recognize that virtually every relationship, you know, relationships happen through resonance. I've not seen any yet in the work that I've done. Number, I don't know how many thousands of people I've worked with over the years. I've not seen any that are based in perfect matching bags of love. I haven't seen one. Pretty much because of the condition of our genetics and our world, everybody's pretty much attracted through matching bags of garbage. And that's beautiful because, when I first taught the workshop, Healing Your Relationships, that's what it was called. Because I had a belief that there was such a thing as a diseased relationship. You'll notice now the workshop is called Healing Through Relationships because there are no diseased relationships. There are relationships in which there are diseased people. And if we take the tools up and then we find goodwill, and that's what the commitment is, but we find goodwill with each other and go, oh, I got a bag of garbage, you got one, and I can sure see yours and get it going. I just need to say the right word with the right tone of voice, and man, I can trigger you like crazy. But rather than that, I have this commitment, and I'm going to use voice tones that only reflect my care and concern for you. And so now we have, the relationship that yesterday, because of denial and dissociation, we thought was sending us to hell, literally becomes the vehicle for taking us to heaven. And heaven is simply living life without a bag of garbage, living as true, our true created essence. I see Miss Susan Bingham has got her hand up.
No,
Or at least
I
her
don't.
microphone. Oh, your microphone's open.
It is?
So I figured you must have had it. Well, I can hear you loud and clear, so it must be.
No, I'm
Oh,
lying
Little
in my
Red
bed.
Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood.
I am lying down, enjoying this very much, but I didn't put my
Cool.
hand up, but I guess I did somehow. I also opened my video, and I'm going to shut it again. There you go.
Okay.
So,
Well, you didn't. When I said had your hand up, what I meant was your microphone was open. So
yeah, no,
and
I
so-
understand. Yep.
So
So,
what's on your mind?
well,
What do you think about all of this?
which thing?
Well, the whole conversation we're having around, well, we started off with whether we're doing the work or whether we're just filling our minds, and then move to circumcision and move to the patriarchy, matriarchy, the hand that rocks the cradle, projection.
It's a good discussion. Yeah. No, I didn't have our boy circumcised either. And years later, when he was in an all boys choir, he came home looking at me just terrified. They'd been on a retreat. And he looked at his roommate, and he was very differently built than his roommate down there.
Yeah.
And he said, Mom, I have to tell you something, but I don't know how to tell you. And what he was terrified. He says, I think there's something wrong with me.
Oh my God.
I know. And then I said, what? You can tell me anything. I think there's something wrong with me. And he went on, and he was crying, and he was 8 years old. He was the newest member. And so that big discussion
So he didn't do his boys either. He just stopped that whole thing. But yeah.
Probably a conversation that needs to be had as the boy grows.
I know,
To
it
let him know
never
so that
occurred
kind of
to me.
shock doesn't happen. Yeah, that
I
would
know.
be. I mean, one of the things our culture promotes is, oh, if you're the same as everybody else, then it's good.
Yeah,
It's one of the peer pressure.
right.
So bless his heart on that one.
I know. Well, I just read that there's some out that boys, 18 or 15 to, they're now men, 35 are the most anxious group in our culture now. And maybe that was always the case, but I thought, oh, those poor fellas. And grandson Jacob is right in the middle of that. He says girls are dangerous. He finds them dangerous. They're so full of politically correct requirements and talk, and they accuse him of being a male chauvinist, and it's coming and going on all sides. We're all just so dysregulated, or whatever the word is.
We've been taught not to breathe.
Mm.
If we could just get that idea, 90% of what the world's concerned about would disappear, would be my offering.
Mm-hmm. If we knew how to breathe. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, if we just did.
Mm.
Still breathing with you.
I'm thinking of Carrie heading out to India. Such a big deal. And she's on the radio today. Oh, my goodness. So
Yeah, that's a big journey.
it is. I picture it like the way young men used to set out seeking their fortune. That's what she's doing in that way, whatever way that is. But it's a big odyssey.
Yeah, I can remember when I went, it was a big deal. Actually, the starting point, I had not long hair, but I had a good head of hair when my kids were small. And I decided when I was going to India that I was going to shave my head. I had a beard. I was going to shave my head and my beard.
Mm-hmm.
And like you just said, I never thought of the consequences of it. But I was going to play a joke on my daughter by, she's out in the front. I'll be back in a minute. And I went back and shaved my head, shaved my beard, and came out. She just freaked out.
I bet.
Like, I don't know. And it just had never even occurred to me. It's like, but it's me. Ah!
Oh,
That wasn't very nice. I just had never thought of the consequences of it.
Right.
But yeah, India was quite a journey.
Where did you go and when?
I went about, I'm not even sure what year it was, maybe 1987, 88, something like that. Went for a couple of months and had a student who did a thing called Kaya Kopa. And it's an Ayurvedic medical process of youthing. And her teacher was 113 years of age, lived in India in Bombay.
Wow.
And she had shared some of my work, forgiveness work, and he invited me. That's what inspired the journey to India.
Wow.
So she and her husband and a medical doctor that was a student of mine came with me. We all went and spent about 2 months. We actually the least expensive way to do it. We were up in the Kulu Valley, a place called the Kulu Valley. We actually built a house. It was just like a little shack kind of thing. And the weather was supposed to be decent enough to do the work there that we had planned to do. And this gentleman, 113 years of age, was the first time he'd ever left Bombay, got on a train and came up to the Kulu Valley. And I forget, it was like a 24-hour train ride, something like that.
Wow.
And we got there and it was cold, and we ended up having to rent a hotel to have heat. And even at the hotel, the power would only be available maybe 5 or 6 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we had 6 of us, and we all slept in the same bed with our clothes on just to keep the heat, because it was that cold. And this fellow was pretty small, pretty frail at 113. And we spent about a week just hanging around, seeing if was going to warm up, and it didn't. So we ended up getting on a train and going back to Bombay and finding an ashram there to work in. And this guy at 113, he carried his own bags and made his way on the train. He was amazing.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
If you know the name Ann Wigmore?
No, I don't.
Ann Wigmore has a thing. Actually, this is one of the ways that the circles we used to do before about Heartland. We used to do our intensives at a place called the Creative Health Institute, which is an Ann Wigmore Institute in Michigan, a town called, believe it or not, Hodunk, Michigan. And I used to do my intensives there, and she's a woman who brought wheatgrass to America. The idea of using wheatgrass as a cancer cure, and they had all kinds of. She had, I think, 3 different centers. She had one in Boston, there's one in Florida now too. There's one in Puerto Rico or Costa Rica, one or the other. I think it was Costa Rica, and one in Michigan. And it was this man who introduced her to the old idea of raw food and wheatgrass and sprouts. So it was kind of an interesting circle to connect in with, and it was a pretty interesting and intense visit to India.
That sure was. What an amazing man. I'm thinking about 113, being that cold, going to a new place when he'd never left where his home was, and he was 113.
It was amazing. I mean, he had packed. We were planning on doing 2 weeks of work, and he had packed to stay for 2 weeks, and he took care of handling and transferring his own bags, and was totally independent, and he was just pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Blessed. So anyone else? Thoughts, questions, answers, ideas? Miss Joan, welcome back. Terry? Amy, welcome, young lady. How is the communication practicum fitting in for you, Joan? Is that settling in? Is it making more sense?
Yes, the more I participate, the more I get out.
Well, I'm excited about the next session we're going to do with Lucy and her daughter, and it'll be interesting just to see how long the practicum, the practice aspect of it goes, just because it is the way to build the brain cells. So it's exciting to see what's coming together, and I thought that was a great session on Sunday afternoon. Pretty awesome. So we're down to about 12 minutes. Anyone have a thought for us? Well, let's talk about, I'd asked everybody to take or get the worksheet for the Healing Through Relationships workshop, the one where you write those 3 early memories. So maybe we'll just open this space. Did anybody write the 3 early memories and fill in the sets of blanks for them? If so, is there anything to share from it?
Michael, you mentioned 3 early memories of conflict.
Yes.
And it does amaze me that my 3 earliest memories are of conflict. Why do we remember the harsh things?
Because they're harsh.
Okay.
It's it's an energy, and amplitude, intensity is, it's like having the volume turned up. If I've got, 10 radios running in the room and they're all running at the same volume, I have trouble keeping track of which one's, playing that music, this voice, that voice. But if I take one of them and crank it up 10 times the volume of anything else, that's the one that's going to break through everything. And when it is imprinted on this body-mind unit through the senses, it's imprinted at the intensity that it happens.
Yeah.
So, and to me, the whole idea of the Aramaic forgiveness process is to simply shave off some of the intensity. Each time, when they said to Yeshua, well, how many times do I forgive this to my brother? Is 7 times enough? It's like, no, we got a whole lot more work than that to do. And each time, my best understanding, when you think of it from an energy point of view, with a physics point of view, each time I apply forgiveness, it's like I shave off a little bit of the intensity of that experience, a little more. And then it comes to the point where, having removed all of that emotional intensity, it just becomes another memory in the memory bank. Doesn't mean I forget it. It's just that when it's activated, when it's resonated, it's just another piece of information rather than, oh my God, look at this.
Mm-hmm.
And to get to the point where the noise of the generational assaults becomes quiet enough that the voice of the breath can come through. What was called the still small voice.
Mm. Well, and then in Jeannie's book, she often talks about what you've been calling the file folder effect. There's that linking one memory, but not only a memory with a memory that's similar, but also the meanings you gave the first memory. Jeannie will say, well, I got from that experience, I understood that I was worthless, or I was invisible, or, I needed to earn my keep, or, it goes on and on. We connect interpretations to what happened to us. What makes the mind interpret against oneself like that?
Well, my offering would be that, remembering it's all resonance, and if I come from a long line of deniers of the value of my own being, or pretend I don't even have one, and then that's reinforced by a power person message. And the primary power person message, when everybody gets down to it, the primary power person message is something to the effect of, you're broken.
Mm.
It might have only been one event. That may have been the idyllic childhood, and there's this one event that was totally misinterpreted, and the parent was locked into a high stress level. The child did a behavior that just took the stress to the next level, and bingo, out came the power person dynamic from the parent. And that assault energy totally overwhelm the child. The child, those three conditions that are met to determine a power person dynamic is the power person has more power over the child than the child has. The power person is not functioning out of love, and the child perceives it as survival. If that happens, then the child's field opens, and energetically, that's just absorbed. And in the future, it will be re-radiated at the intensity that it came in.
Mm-hmm.
And because those, when you think of it from the point of view of energy, those types of memories are always, until they're forgiven, are always at an intensity where they're going to be the first thing to come forward to form a construct in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So the upshot of that, why, Lincoln? Hey, Lincoln just came in, finished his lunch. So the upshot of that exercise is going to be that we're going to look at it and we'll do several things with it, and then ultimately see that it's simply an energy that's held at an amplitude, an interpretation that's held at an amplitude that it easily just pops into place in any circumstance. And then, of course, to recognize in any circumstance where it pops into place, because we've pretty much all been brought up in the one world universal religion of blame, what do? We dissociate from it. We make pictures of other people, and then we have conversations about how other people are the reason I'm feeling this way. And
Never
that,
ending.
breaking that denial dissociation game,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to, in the space where one of those old power person dynamics come up, to be able to just breathe, soften, notice where the structure wants to restrict the movement or the release of that energy, to soften into it, to allow it to come forward in the presence of the breath and dissolve it. And that's when that dynamic, whether it's rage or sadness or grief or pain or depression or whatever it is, until the family system, because really we're really dealing with these generational dynamics that go on and on and on if they're never dealt with. So being able to undo them is, to me, the gift of the ages.
It totally is. And I know you started talking at one point about empathy, but if we can close the gap between ourselves as a family member, like I'm talking about my grandson Jacob now, he started loosening up when we stopped telling him he's got to stop using weed and alcohol, and started saying, your rages were really because you were so terrified. And I get it now. You have been terrified. I'm so sorry you've been so terrified. And he lost a relationship he cared about, instead of saying how bad it was and it was a damaging one. And the family started saying, I know, I've broken up with people too, and it's just feels so bad, and it just takes a while to just hang on. And I could sense that he was breathing. Now, Michael, you may not mean that the same thing by breathing, but he was starting to soften, and that's when the breathing can take place. And now he's, miracle story, his boss has given him a gift card to Starbucks because he is doing such a great job, and this is just an amazing thing. And
That's awesome.
He tells his parents he's got his brain back because he's not doing weed. So he's kind of creeping back to the fold. So that's
awesome.
Yeah, well, it's the tools again. Those tools stand by themselves.
Absolutely.
There's something that's valuable in themselves.
The beauty of it is nothing to believe. If you just take this and use the tool, your life is going to change. That's all. And
Mhm.
there's nobody in the creation that I know of, nowhere I've looked, and all the places I've looked, especially where that forgiveness piece is, there's nowhere that it exists. And so to me, the monumental presence that must have been there with Yeshua to be able to understand and say, well, here's how you resolve this one. Here's the tool.
Mm. It's got to be out there
And it
too.
doesn't make
Because
any sense either.
how do you mean? Say?
Well, you talk to the average person and they have this perfectly wonderful, reasonable, great goal. And you say to them, and now we want you to cancel that goal. It's like, that's stupid.
Oh
And
yeah.
and as the rational mind works, if you just
Mm.
fill the mind with education, information, and don't use the tool, then
Mhm.
That makes sense. But understanding how that mind works, and it took me better than 3 decades to understand why you would do such a silly ass thing as cancel a perfectly good goal. But and there's no belief required. It's just, well, do it and watch what happens. And what I hear you saying with Jacob is that you created a warm, with your conversation and your energy, a warm and safe space for him. And that safe space is such a key.
Mm.
A space where there is the integrity of the presence of love.
Well, and we've given up the goal of getting him sober.
Yep, it's another big piece of it. That can be a tough piece of it.
Well, we never let go of that goal, but we realized we couldn't focus on it right then.
Right. I hear you. That's a wonderful report. That's pretty awesome.
I know.
You
isn't
think
it?
you think about how quickly it happened. I mean, what is it, less than 2 years?
Oh, it seems
Dealing with
simple.
dual addictions, at least.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like triple addiction, because there was alcohol, there was hostility, and there was weed, right?
Right. I mean, the weed caused the hostility. I mean, who cares? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So that's pretty awesome that he's pulling out of that and coming back to the family. That's
And the fact
all
that
this
in the Course in Miracles, when she talks about forgiveness, Helen Druckmann, God really is Jesus, saying you affirm the quote bad deed by acknowledging that it was done. If you say they never did it, well, of course, in actuality, maybe they did do something, but what's being said there is that the goal of having the person be different than they were is canceled. It's a translation of your work into her work, Helen's words, but she was onto it too, but she never put it in the way you did about the goal. The wording of the goal business and the canceling of goal is the amazing spelling out of that. Anyway,
it's the
I'm going
core of it
on.
all.
And what'd you say?
I'm with you. It's the core piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And the course does in that one lesson, let go all the things you think you want.
Yep.
Your trifling treasure, your goals
There
put
it
away,
is.
collapse and leave a clean and open space with it. That's precisely Aramaic forgiveness.
Yep.
And and it takes when you realize some of the traumas that are hidden in there that are going to have to come up for people to work through,
Right.
you can understand why they don't want to go there. It's like, no, let me just keep talking about somebody out there that's the problem in my life.
Right.
So,
Oh yeah. All right. Good stuff. Ooh, Friday.
well,
We're due to have a foot or to a foot and a half of snow up here. So we're filling jugs of water and cooking some lasagna ahead of time. And holy mackerel, we might not have power for a while.
we'll hold a space that everybody's safe. We're talking about as much as an inch of ice in some areas around here, although the last day or so they've said it looks like it's going to move a little further north, so heading in your direction rather than than ours, because originally they were saying there might be up to 6 or 8 inches of snow here, but
Yeah,
it looks like it might be softening. And
yeah.
fortunately, we're in an area where the power is pretty reliable. We've been here 7 years now, and we
Good.
haven't had one power outage. So feeling blessed and hoping it
Wonderful.
stays that way through this weekend, and hope that
Yeah.
everybody else is safe too.
Thanks. Thanks to
All right.
everybody.
All right, you have a blessed one. Lots of love, everybody. Appreciate you, and have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings. And Carrie, have a fabulous, safe
Yeah,
journey to.
Carrie.
You just have a blast and send some of that energy back to us, if you would.
Thank you. Yes, I will. I thank you.
All right.
Hi.
Now, you sure you don't need anybody to carry your bags?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Blessings, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate you. Bye-bye.